I can't resist, you can't deny, we can't manage. Open up the wound, cause damage. Open up the door, but it's locked and the keys in the pit of my stomach. I'm in a snake pit, deeper you can plumb.
I have heard of many weapons when it's come to murder, but the weapon that was used in this crime case to this Okie is the most terrifying of all. Death by rattlesnakes. If you guys know me, you know how I feel about snakes, and I do not like them. I've seen many rattlesnakes living in Oklahoma. One time, I even stepped on a rattlesnake that was like 5 feet long. The rattles were huge. I was busy looking at a butterfly and wasn't paying attention, and I stepped right square in the middle of the guy. And he didn't rattle until I stepped on him, and I heard him, and I looked down, and I'm telling you what, this white girl can move. Because I jumped off so quick, he didn't even have a chance to bite. And one time, when I was messing around in my flower garden, getting leaves out, I grabbed a pygmy rattle up in my hand. I threw that thing so far, I probably set a world record. That's how terrified I am of snakes. So when I do this case about Rattlesnake James, you understand that my heart is truly terrified right now. In this case, a man by the name of Rattlesnake James used his rattler as a weapon on his wife. Before we begin this snaky tale, first, my name is Holly. Welcome to the Murder She Shed. Slither on up to the subscribe button and give it a hit before you forget, because you might want to sit a bit and listen to my snake chit chat shit. Forget those rhymes. Let's just hit the subscribe button and let's just keep going. Let's begin. This case comes out of the great state of Alabama. So this time, Alabama, I'm picking on you. Born Major Raymond Lasimba on March 6, 1894, Rattlesnake, as he was called, didn't have high hopes for himself. Born to an impoverished, abusive sharecropper in his home state, Alabama, he was expected to work the fields. However, he was sent to barber school by his brother-in-law and worked as a barber from thereafter. Rattlesnake was described as a pasty man with slick back red hair, red-rimmed green eyes, and a high nasal voice, nasally. He may not have been all that smart, but Rattlesnake had more than enough charm to spare. He could charm any lady right out of their pants. And he did. He actually was married 5 times. He had that it factor, ladies. That it factor, whatever that is. What do they mean when they say it factor? I'm not sure, but he had it. Before Rattlesnake's first marriage, his uncle had died, leaving him the beneficiary of a $4,000 life insurance policy. Perhaps this gave him ideas for future use when it came to his wives. His first wife was the lucky one because she walked out before Rattlesnake could actually murder her. She couldn't handle the sadistic ways in which her new husband wanted to make some whoopee. That redhead had a kinky side, and it was a little more than she had bargained for. So almost as quick as they were married, Ma Duncan hit the road running right out the door. Dude, I'm not be tied up anymore. Yeah, I guess that's what she said. Later in life, he refused to speak to her and claimed that he had left her because she had put ground glass and poison in his food. Don't blame her. After returning from World War I as a private in the Marines, he moved to Kansas and found a new wife. After his new wife became pregnant, he began an affair with a local girl. Unfortunately for this new wife, her father came to the barber shop with a weapon. They don't like that word on YouTube. Threatened Rattlesnake, and he decided it was high time to hightail it out of town. Daddy must have put the fear of God in him, because from here on out, he went by Robert S. James. This is when he married wife number 3 and immediately took a life insurance policy out on her. After a blissful 3 months of marriage, he had already grown tired of his new wife, Winona, and decided it was about time for him and his new wife to take a drive to Pikes Peak. During the drive, he happened to run off the peak of the mountain. Oops! But he was able to jump out in time. Winona, however, suffered a serious head injury. The police, who responded for some reason, thought nothing of the bloodstained hammer they noted in the car's back seat. I just want to say this part I'm making up. But Rattlesnake said, or in my mind he said this in his high nasally voice.
Oh, don't worry about that hammer in the back seat covered in blood. I was working on my back porch last week and slammed the hammer into my thumb. Tis, tis, nothing to see here.
Sorry, that was awful. Although Winona's head wound was grave, she pulled through after a 2-week stay in a Colorado hospital. And then she was sent back to her vacation home with Rattlesnake. Fortunately for Rattlesnake, Winona had no memory of the accident. And so after she went back home, well, another accident occurred. During her recovery, James walked to a grocery store for supplies and asked the grocer for a lift back to his wife. They found Winona lying on her back in a water-filled bathtub, dead. How convenient. Her husband suggested she had still been suffering vertigo from the head injury and her hair was dirty and she just had to wash it. So awarded $14,000 from her life insurance. With a small fortune, James returned to Alabama, where he took up a relationship with his 18-year-old niece. And this is the man that had sent him through barber school. And he runs off with the man's daughter to California. He opened another barbershop where she could work as his manicurist. In 1934, he married his fourth wife, Ruth Thomas, from New Orleans, although he was still getting it on with his niece. But she didn't have to know that, did she? He was going to get rid of this new wife anyway. What difference did it make? But Ruth, the new wife, said, I am not going to get a life insurance because, it seems like people who take out a life insurance shortly end up dead. So she's pretty smart. So he went ahead and filed for annulment because he's like, dang, I can't get anything out of this woman. She's too smart for me. So they divorced and he moved on. Undaunted, James turned his attention to his nephew, Cornelius Wright. He insured the young man with a huge life insurance policy in case of accidental death and then invited him over for the visit. During the visit, James actually lent him his car. And wow, but the boy didn't go out riding on mountains and run off a cliff. Of course, he got that life insurance money. Sure, he had a life insurance on the car too. Curiously, James sent a telegram to his sister informing her of her son's death even before it actually happened. James collected his money and continued with his niece to California. Yes, his niece was still tagging along and still alive. Still kicking. James opened a new barbershop in California and hired a 25-year-old beautiful blonde-haired woman named Mary Busch as a manicurist. She was a real head turner, so James didn't waste any time getting to know her. Soon after they met, Rattlesnake convinced Mary to take out a $10,000 life insurance policy on herself. Mary became pregnant quickly after only 3 months of marriage. Rattlesnake didn't want a living wife, much less a living baby. He hired a financially strapped ex-sailor and fry cook named Charles Hope, who had been a customer at his barbershop, to help him get rid of Mary and the unwanted baby. Hope suggested many ways for Rattlesnake to get rid of his wife and make it look like an accident. First, he suggested they kill Mary with black widow spiders. That's the obvious thing to suggest. He said all I have to do is throw them in her bed. Then they discussed possibly burning down the house. Well, Rattlesnake didn't want to do that. Then they thought about poisoning her through a scratched skin with a chemical and shooting her in a fake holdup as an alternative. But Hope did buy some black widow spiders because apparently they thought that was the best of the plans they came up with. Mary complained in a letter about a badly swollen leg from a bite she received in her garden. It didn't kill her though. After the failure with the spiders, Rattlesnake came up with an idea inspired from history by the story of Cleopatra's snake bite and when she unalived herself by the bite of a snake. The idea happened to be reinforced by a moonlit walk. Such a romantic thing. One evening, he had taken Mary for a stroll on the Ocean Park Pier. While she was gazing at the scenery, he was transfixed by a sideshow concession, an act featuring a tank full of rattlers. He convinced Hope to go find him some rattlers. Hope found a Pasadena reptile wrangler named Snake Joe Hootenbrink. I'm not sure you say that, but Snake Joe's what we're going to call him. Snake Joe sold him a pair of California rattlers. Their venom was supposed to kill within an hour. The snakes turned out to be pussycats. I don't know how they know that, but apparently they wouldn't bite anything. I guess they tested them out. And he went back and he said, "Hey dude, you need to sell me some mean rattlers." And he came back with a couple of supposed killers named Lethal and Lightning. 2 huge rattlesnakes that were gonna knock her dead. On August 4th, 1935, Hope and Rattlesnake set their bizarre plan in motion. Rattlesnake James convinced Mary that she needed an abortion. They didn't need a child. He claimed he had found a doctor to perform the operation in the breakfast nook of their home, but that her eyes would have to be covered to protect his identity. He then plied her with whiskey and placed an unconscious Mary, who was wearing soft pink pajamas, on a table in the breakfast nook. The snakes bit Mary 3 times, but though she writhed in agony, the venom didn't instantly kill her. A panicked Hope sat nervously in a car in the garage while Rattlesnake frequently came out to supply updates and give the jittery man some whiskeys. Hours passed. Finally, Rattlesnake came out and sat next to Hope in the car. "Well, that's it," he said. Tired of waiting for her to die, he had drowned Mary in the bathtub. Hope took Mary's body and laid it face down in a pond to make it look just like an accidental drowning. Rattlesnake finally was caught after he tried to collect the insurance money by an insurance investigator who actually stumbled upon the fact that the barber had been married 5 times and that Jane's 3rd wife had also died by a drowning. He tipped the police off. Unbeknownst to Rattlesnake, police had quietly begun to investigate him. Hope came forward, pinning the whole crime on the red-headed barber. Police bugged Rattlesnake's house and indeed uncovered a crime, though not the one they actually were investigating. Rattlesnake and his niece were lovers, and police had it on tape. He was arrested for incest and taken to a safe house to be interrogated. There he cracked and confessed, although he claimed Hope planned the whole murder. When the niece, who was taken into protective custody, was told of her uncle's alleged plot, she exclaimed, "My God, I know nothing of this. It is too horrible to think about. I guess I am a lucky girl." Authorities noticed fang marks and the black swelling on Mary's leg, proof the rattlesnakes were used to kill her. His wife, that drowned in a tub, was dug up and an autopsy performed. The medical examiner said she suffered 2 skull fractures caused by a hard moving object. Just my guess, but perhaps it was that bloody hammer in the back seat of that car. Could be. The Rattlesnake, Lethal, and Lightning were given back to Snake Joe, and they were used again during the trial. Interesting. A lot of interesting things happened during that trial. Rattlesnake and Hope, handcuffed together, were arraigned on May 6, 1936, and charged with first-degree murder. Now, enemies, the two had to be separated when Rattlesnake threatened Hope.
"If you plead guilty, I'll break your neck."
The trial began on June 26, 1936. It was a media circus. Rattlesnake pled not guilty by reason of insanity. Rattlesnake took the stand on July 15th, claiming his confession had been coerced by the police. That same day, he and Hope were at it again, when lawyers made the odd choice of having the 2 men reenact the murder scene. Why not? Rattlesnake climbed on the heavy mahogany attorney's table. He lay on his back as Mary, like she would have been laying. Hope was led alongside. In the little play, he was supposed to seize Rattlesnake's foot and jam it into the replica of the original snake box, just like they had jammed Mary's foot into that box. That's terrifying, really. Very, truly terrifying. Yeah, don't ever do that to me. God, I would have a heart attack before I'd even die of a rattlesnake bite. Anyway, while they were performing this little play in front of the jury, the men got into a huge fight and began to brawl. During the commotion, though, the Rattlesnake Lethal escaped his see-through coffin-like box. Like a streak of brown quicksilver, the reptile slid under a bookcase, his vicious rattling through the courtroom into hysteria. People were standing on their seats, running everywhere, being crazy as all get out. It's when Snake Joe came to the rescue and grabbed the rattlesnake and picked it up and slammed it back in the box. Hero Snake Joe the hero of this story. On July 25th, Rattlesnake was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to death by hanging. He spent his final years in prison appealing his conviction, gaining an enormous amount of weight, and finding Jesus with the aid of an enamored religious worker named Helen Atkinson. Who knows? He may have just been trying to find himself a new wife. When his last appeal was denied, his eyes barely shifted, and he simply said,
I can take it. Let's just say that Rattlesnake Bob James is not afraid to die.
On May 2nd, 1942, there was no way of slithering out of this for Rattlesnake James, and he became the last man to hang in the state of California. The rope was the wrong length, and it took over 10 minutes for Rattlesnake James to die. Rattlesnake hit bottom and was observed to be fighting by pulling on the straps, wheezing, whistling, trying to get air. Blood was oozing through the black cap. He was observed urinating, defecating, and the droppings fell on the floor. The stench filled the air. Witnesses were said to have passed out and had to be carried from the witness room. Some of them threw up, but that was a stinky place when everybody got done. Wow. When he was finally dead enough to cut him down, big hunks of flesh were torn off. James' face was purple, his eyes were popped out, and his tongue swollen and hanging from his mouth. Rattlesnake was tortured just like he had tortured his pregnant wife. Snake Joe, although he was bitten by one of his 200 rattlesnakes in 1958, he survived and lived until 1966 in Los Angeles, California. Snake Joe, the hero of this story, passed away, surrounded by 200 of his beautiful snakes. The end. The end of this awful rattlesnake story. And that was a snaky tale, folks. A very snaky tale. I'm going to be sweating like a whore at church because I don't have the air conditioner on again. It just makes it sound so awful. But if I got sweat, which I already feel it rolling off my forehead, I don't have a forehead, off my forehead, then you'll understand. I'm sorry. Sorry, I'm a sweaty whore mess. Sorry. Nasty man with slick back hair. Another freaking red wasp. I hate those. Almost as bad as snakes. Very nasally. Nasally, my friends. Nasally. Take that one out there. Oh, I just hit myself in the freaking face. And Barry Bush as a manicurist. I know they just my threat, my god dang. How shiny is my forehead right now? I'm freaking burning up. I got sweat. I got sweat running down my cleavage. I got boogers coming out of my eyes. I feel like I got a lot. He hired a financially strapped ex-sailor. Is it a sailor or a sailor? I think it's a sailor. Maybe. Oh, God, I'm sweating. Oh, my God, I'm going to die out here. Oh, Jesus, I got to go in.
Cause I'm better undercover, I'm a lion, a snake. When I'm talking to your mother than your father, it's best not to go in there. It's like that moonlight bother in the morning air. And don't care, I'm talking to your daughter. You drown me in the water just to see me struggling and label me a martyr. The white pills, what you ought to do. Baby, I'm a cross with a hammer just to martyr you. The nails for the palms of wrists, and if you want it, there's a